All right, we'll call today's meeting of the Legislative and Human Resource Committee to order. First on our agenda is public comment. If there's anyone willing or wanting to address the LHR committee, you can do so. State your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
How you doing, everybody? My name is DeAndre Jones. I stay at 967 Democrat Avenue, which is on the west side of the city. First of all, I'd like to say my heart goes out to those students that were in the tragic events of Michigan State University. This is really serious to me because I was the guy who brought a gun to a high school years ago, and I was actually speaking to Michigan State University yesterday. I was talking to him about getting the school to come out to the Four-Star Theater to participate in the esports competition. School to prison pipeline is a real thing, and I see that you guys have a request for juvenile probation officers. And I was at Lighthouse Academy. I seen some of our state legislators there at my old high school where I won a state championship.
DeAndre, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Mr. Morgan.
Just want to say good morning. My name is Keith Morgan with Wyoming.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, we will close the public comment section. Approval of minutes. Do I have a motion and support to approve? Teal?
Support?
LeGrand? All those in favor say yes? Yes. All those opposed? Last meeting's minutes have been approved. Equalization, Matt Wolford is here for his presentation, always does a great job, has some history facts here before us. So like he was saying, a great part of Kent County history is right in front of Matt there and in front of us. So it's really kind of neat. So Matt, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning. My name is Matt Wolford. I am the Equalization Director. Joining me today are several of our staff members who are here. Really, it's my privilege to give this report, but this report is really the culmination of the work that these. So what I'm going to be doing is talking to you today about equalization's role. And equalization department is a constitutionally mandated department. Very important function for representatives. Are responsible for really managing both sides of the property tax equation. Every property tax that an owner pays is based on two variables. It's a taxable. Values and taxable values. Assessed values being 50% of market value, taxable values being those values that are limited by Proposal A. And then the second report that we provide to you on an annual basis is the apportionment report. And the apportionment report is a report that summarizes all of the millage rates for all the taxing authorities in Kent County. And it's the board's responsibility through its equalization department to make sure that all of these millages are lawful under Michigan's Constitution, that they comply with all millage reduction mandates and also the Headley Amendment. So those are the two key functions that our constitutionally mandated department fulfills for the Board of Commissioners. What I'm going to be talking about today, as quickly as I can, is how our goals as a department align with the overall strategic goals of the Board of Commissioners. We're going to talk a little bit about what our goals are, some of the measures that we track from year to year to show that we're being consistently with our results. Talk about some of our collaborations and take a brief look ahead. So the board goal that all of our activities pretty much link up with is economic prosperity. So we're going to focus in on aligning with all of those. So our mission, simplicity is hard. I've been here for a number of years, and when it comes to developing a mission statement, simple is hard. This really is essence is what we do. We provide for a fair system of property assessment and taxation, and we provide professional mapping services to all the cities and townships in Kent County, and that includes the wider public as well. We do this through four key goals, really three main goals, and then one consistent theme that permeates everything that we do. Each year, our responsibility as your equalization department is to project the true cash value of where the assessors need to raise their values. Then, what we have to do is we have to receive the information back from the assessors after we've given them those instructions, and we need to validate that they actually change the level of value in their units to comply with the results of the market studies that we've done. And if they have done that, that's great. If they don't hit the target, so we set the target and then we ask them to hit the target. If they don't hit the target, my sole power as equalization director acting on behalf of the board is to impose an equalization factor, hence the name equalization, where the entire property tax system is based on the concept of being fair and equitable. And if one assessing jurisdiction has failed in their role, it's our job to come in and impose an equalization factor that equalizes it. So whether you're in Spencer Township or the city of Grand Rapids, we all pay a county tax, and that system is based on the principle of fair and equitable taxation on the assessed value side. Our second goal, and you can kind of see some of the visualizations in front, is to preserve the public land survey system, which we've inherited from previous generations. So there's a variety of monuments ranging from a wooden post to a shotgun barrel to a wagon axle and to a brick. And for those people back here, if you want to see them at the end, you can come and take a look. But standing in front of us is a modern monument, a 4-foot iron monument with a monument cap. I think I have a cap that is circulating that you guys can sort of see what they look like. And this is a generational thing that we're currently the stewards of, and you're never more than a half mile from a monument in Kent County, and that's the work of multiple generations. Thirdly, we provide professional tax mapping for all of the cities and townships in Kent County. Back in '67, the county developed a mandate here by the Board of Commissioners to take a sort of a patchwork of property tax maps with varying level of professionalism across the county and consolidated that function here at the county level. And so that falls under our county mandates. And the easiest way that I like to say that, if you imagine Kent County as a 250,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, it's our professional mapper's job to make sure that all of those pieces fit together perfectly and there's no gaps and no overlaps. And that's based on the principle that all the land in Michigan is subject to the property tax, and no land in Michigan should be subjected to double taxation. So if we don't have those accurate puzzle pieces in place, either it's not getting taxed or someone's getting double taxed, and that's why that standard exists. Running throughout all of our things is providing expertise to local units and to the general public through our customer service interactions. Last year, we had over 5,700 customer interactions, either by phone, by email, or over the counter. And so we're constantly engaging with the public physically, and then many, many more than that through the use of our website. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our key performance indicators here. Each year, as I mentioned, we annually audit the assessment rolls so that the assessors bring them in. Each government unit has many property classes: agricultural, commercial, industrial. We track all of those. There are a total of 138 separate equalization studies that we conduct in the 30 government assessing units. We also, in order to do that, we project the taxable value by two different methods. We do it by either a direct sales assessment to sales ratio study in residential, or we do it through appraisal studies. In those areas where we do appraisal studies, that's in the agricultural, commercial, and industrial classes of properties. There's often not enough sales. So if you imagine residential, there's lots of sales. So we have enough to directly measure that statistically through processing deeds. And we'll talk about some of those metrics in a moment. For those classes that don't have a lot of sales, we have to go out, and that's where our professional appraisal group goes out, and they do professional appraisals, and their opinion of value acts as a proxy as if it were a sale. So we study the land values, and then we study those. This measurement here represents the total number of sales in those three classes of property of 460 that our appraisers go out on and verify all of the information and make sure that they have accurate information so that we can gauge the market through our economic condition studies that we do. So once we've studied the market and we've gotten all of our sales verified, the way now that we actually come up with a valid measure of the change in market value from year to year is we conduct professional appraisals. And our appraisal group last year did 2,217. Our target for each year is 1,800 appraisals in the ag, commercial, and industrial. We routinely exceed that because it is a statistical sampling of all of the properties. We always like to try to overpick by a certain margin so that if we ever have to remove any data because of extenuating circumstances, we have a buffer there. So we make sure that our measurement is statistically valid going forward. And that equates to about 500, well, this year it was 521 appraisals per full-time appraiser. We have 4.25 full-time equivalents. With the monumentation program that I referred to, our goal is to repair or reestablish 100% of the monuments that are reported to us damaged. Kent County's program is actually complete. There are over 4,000 of those iron monuments in the ground throughout Kent County. You are never more than a half mile away from a Kent County iron monument. This is a blessing to Kent County because our surveying costs are cheaper and the integrity of our property rights are intact because of these monuments that are in the ground. In 2023, we received a grant amount of $171,000. Our plan is to do 161 monuments in the coming year. This past year, we did 144. So we also, on an annual basis, maintain the real property inventory. So we keep track on behalf of Fiscal Services and the Administrator's Office, a record of all of the properties that are owned by Kent County. We also conduct inspections for the Purchase of Development Right Program, and those are two things that we do as well. We also have a contract with the City of Grand Rapids in two different contracts. One for split services, where we actually take the applications directly for the splits applications because of our proximity and collaboration with the city. And then we also hire the city surveyor to act as the county representative to the remonumentation program. I act as grant administrator with the help of my assistant, Julia Dwyer, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. So those collaborations work quite well. With regard to our mapping function, last year we had 6,900 mapping changes. So if you think about that 250,000 jigsaw puzzle piece, we're constantly redesigning new puzzle pieces. New plats come in, people are splitting off the excess acreage from farms, especially in developing areas. And so our mapping staff is very busy. They're also very efficient. They work very good, and we work very hard to get most of our mapping changes done within 30 days of being received at the county. I mentioned earlier that in the residential class, we don't typically do appraisals. That's because on average, we receive between 25 and 35,000 recorded documents for the people that are conducting their private real estate transactions, and those transactions get recorded at Register of Deeds. So last year, there was 27,000, just over 27,000 deeds recorded. That gives us plenty of information to draw our market studies from for residential. So what were some of our accomplishments? Some of the things that I'm proud of, that I think we're proud of as a group, is we have adopted a mobility solution. So we've kind of gone with the potential to be paperless in the field. We yield to our appraisers' personal preferences, so there are still some papers and things that they bring out into the field, but we have a mobility package that allows us to capture all of our information in the field with mobility with a program called Pivot Point. We've been heavily involved in the development of CAMA data standards statewide. We are currently in phase 2 statewide, and we have led in that area over the past several years, so we're pretty proud of that. As a group, we all work really hard to constantly try to strive and improve things in our industry. This past year, we participated in a new state system called the Equalization Gateway as well. We also like to do market research collaboration with our local units, so we subscribe to real estate market research firms like CoStar, and because we're not directly involved in the defense of tax appeals, this is one way that we can help the local units by gathering information on a countywide basis and then sharing that with the local units. We're also actively working with the Register of Deeds office, and we'll be also working with the Treasurer's office to look at system flows through. I like to refer to those three departments collectively as the land records departments. And I think having talked with Lisa and with Pete McGregor, I think there's lots of opportunities for us to think more systemically about the workflow through those things. And we've done some innovations on importing and bringing our systems together, and we're pretty proud of that as well. We also, through an intergovernmental agreement, serve as we provide equalization director services to Allegan County, and that's been six or 7 years now that we've been involved with Allegan County, and that's been a very successful collaboration. We're really proud of that. And we've been able to develop the next generation of leadership while at the same time creating some efficiencies there. We've had the distinction collectively as a group to be honored in the last couple of years through the Equalization Directors Association. I was actually selected as Director of the Year, representing our group in all of our efforts for some of the CAMA data standards. And this past year, we were recognized as the Distinguished Assessing Jurisdiction by the Michigan Assessors Association for some of the same reasons and some of the leadership that we've been able to provide. I referred also to our split services agreement and our city surveyor remonumentation agreement. Those are ongoing collaborations that we believe are just excellent examples of working smarter together with our neighbors next door. And so we're pretty proud of those as well. This is just sort of a visualization of some of our touch points. I could go on about several others, but I was told there was a time limit. I have no idea how well I have done so far, but there's just a couple more slides. So a look ahead. We're really implementing business intelligence software. We've been trying to find the most appropriate use for Power BI. We've developed several ways. We've used it to update our land values. Power BI is sort of next generation Excel. It's kind of like Excel on steroids. We're working hard to see how we can make things better using that technology. We also are using Qualtrics, which is our survey tool, enterprise survey tool that the county is using. And we're using our aerial photography and some of the standards for that, getting building outlines to augment some of our data collection. So we're looking ahead to using those more and more. We also are really looking forward in the coming year to finally achieve a truly sort of cloud-based collaboration space for our local units. There's lots of things we can do in land records to make more of a seamless environment with all of our city and township partners, and we're looking forward to that. I also mentioned we're looking at a land records sort of business process review between the land records department. This spring, we will be doing our we have a contract with an oblique imagery, so we'll be getting our flight done in 2023. We do oblique photos every 3 years. And we've worked a lot of years with fiscal services. That's now, I'm proud to say, that's an operational expense. The costs have come down to the point, and it's such a routine. It's just part of our infrastructure now. It used to be more of a capital expenditure. Now it's really more routine, and we're really, really thankful for that. That's a huge investment that we make, and it makes a lot of difference. We're also working extensively over the course of time with Matt Grosser in emergency management. Matt has done a lot of really innovative things. They've got a drone department, so our abilities and our technologies, and now with adding another professional in Scott Corbin who brings even more ideas, I think the damage assessment side is going to just get better over time through our collaborations. We're also looking forward to using some of the Disney Way sort of strategic planning things. The leadership team has been through it. The rest of our staff is going through some of the training. We're looking forward to incorporating some of those things to incorporate into our strategic plans. And we have several GIS updates. We work very closely with the IT GIS team, and we're going to be doing several updates. We're going to be converting to ArcGIS Pro from our existing software, et cetera. So, how'd I do?
40 minutes if we started at 8:30.
So, on behalf of all of us here, I'd just like to thank you. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for equalization today.
Great, thank you, Matt. Commissioners, any questions for Matt? Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you for being here. I find the historical display here interesting. And recognizing these things are all over the county, is there like a list or a map that shows where all these monuments are? Is that public knowledge?
Absolutely. We had an excellent map at one point. It was my goal to have it here today so that I could show that to you, but I think cleaned out somehow. But
And are these monuments?
absolutely, we can provide a map for you that shows all of the maps.
I like to see
All of
that.
the monuments, yes.
And are these monuments marked with like orange, some type of orange identifiers that says this is a monument here? How are they marked?
So where these monuments are, they're at the intersection of every major road. So when you think of it, you know, when you go a mile north, a mile west, a mile south, and a mile back east, at each one of those corners, so 28th, 44th, Division, Eastern, every one of those intersections is where these corners are. Because what these mark is the square miles in Michigan as were laid out in the public land survey system.
Very cool.
So the thing that distinguishes Kent County from others is that not only do we have them in the intersections, but if you go a half mile in, let's say between Byron Center and Ivan Rest, there'll be a monument at the half mile marker as well. And then if you go into the center of the section, right, where in urban areas, there'll be a lot of subdivisions that will fill up an entire square mile, there'll be a monument in the center of that section as well. Which is why we like to say you're never more than a half mile from a government monument in Kent County. Well, now, what if it's in water? Well, we don't put them in water. But there may be one there, and because water levels rise and fall, if there's not an opportunity to put a physical monument, then through our surveying contracts, what they do is they will run survey witness corners. So this is where you might see a tag on a tree if you're out walking and it says survey witness. Don't ever mess with those. Those are official government property. And so then what they'll do is they'll triangulate. They'll say, the actual center's in that pond, but we will put some stakes on either side and we'll call them witness corners. So you might have 2 or 3 of these surrounding a Lake Buena Vista or something like that, where there'll be a monument then, and then surveyors will know that from this monument and that monument, I can triangulate to that center of section. So when I develop on the north side of the lake, I've got the measurements that I need to protect the integrity of the property lines.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Packel?
Thank you. Thanks for being here. A couple of quick questions. I noticed on your Power BI slide, you mentioned some non-traditional data. Can you give an example of what sort of non-traditional data sets or property data you're interested in that would be fun to hear about?
How much time do I have?
Maybe 1 or 2.
Thank you for that question. I think we have a real opportunity to use non-traditional property data. So, for example, lead contamination, crime statistics, health, well water permits, perk tests, things like that. There's a lot of things. The county, as an organization, we have, I don't know how many departments, I used to say everything from the airport to the zoo, but we chopped off the airport and the zoo. So now it's everything in between the airport and the zoo. There's lots and lots of data there. I was just speaking a couple of weeks ago with Community Action, and Community Action has got a lot of data. And so I believe that the real opportunity for the county is to incorporate the data that we possess, which is the geographic information tied to a parcel number, and then having the rest of the county departments have access to that so that they can now augment their data with authoritative property-based data and create sort of a common sort of warehouse that we can all contribute to and then consume as member departments. So I heard a stat once that's really sort of driven a lot of my passion on this, and that's 80% of all government information is tied to location. So when you think of that, that means 80% of the information in any given department might benefit from us allowing connectivity through something like Power BI. So I think if you ask that question 10 years from now, the question will be is, well, what can you not combine within these data analytics platforms?
I'll try to ask it in 10 years again.
All right.
Great. Any other commissioners? Commissioner DeBoer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director, and thank you to the Equalization Department for all your work. That's all I had.
Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question following up. How do the monuments interact with the road if they are literally in the middle of an intersection?
Yes.
Is it buried under there, or how does that work?
So it's a combination of two things. Many of you may have seen survey crews out and about when you're driving, and you'll see they've got that pod sitting in the middle of an intersection. Many times the survey monuments will be flush to the road. So this monument cap, for example, would be just flush and it would have concrete all the way around it and it'd be sitting right there. And on the top of this monument, you've got this sort of pinpoint thing, and the surveyors will set their points on their highly accurate measurements right on that point, okay? Now, if there's road construction and it happens frequently, well, what happens? You know, this thing goes like that. Well, all of that effort to keep it accurate. So in those cases, it's up to the surveyor's judgment. This is called a monument box. And so what will happen is that this will sit right in here, and that gives that, you know, a couple inches of float. So even if the road heaves or moves a little bit, it might be placed in this with a cap on it. And then when the surveyor goes out to occupy that site, they just pop off the cap, and the positional integrity of the dirt underneath the road really hasn't moved, but everything around it is shifted. Now, I wish Al was here, because when Al was here in his first iteration as county administrator, we actually testified before the legislature allowing the jurisdiction, which in Kent County would be the road commission, to make a decision whether or not a monument box had to be placed or not. And it was really all done for surveyor safety. So we actually passed a law that allowed us to go with the flush with the concrete position. Because we know that we have maintenance contracts, we can always go out and we can fix what we call obliterated corners. So if this is just flush with the concrete, then it's very easy for that surveyor to spend less time in the middle of a busy intersection. So it's a safety issue for our surveyors. Because you've got the point, it's right there, it's exposed most of the time. That thing is going to be pretty locked in like concrete, okay? So it's really not gonna move that much. And if it does move, it might shear off the top of the monument, but it's gonna have to be something very, very powerful to move that thing. So using it flush with the concrete, the surveyor can get in, it's an easy fit, they know exactly, they've got a snug fit right there, they're in, they're out, they're safe, and they've done their job, and it's time and safety. These things, especially if a snowplow goes over them, or, someone, it hits it just right, or a stick.
Right.
They can become caked with dirt, and now the surveyor is gonna have to get in there and dig it all out just to get to that point. But there are instances when these are appropriate, and there are instances when they're not, and we leave that up to the surveyor's discretion, so that they can either go quickly out there and do their job, or they've got a little bit of a cleanup project as well.
Can I ask one
You bet.
follow-up? So if there were a monument, say, that should be on I'm assuming like a highway is sort of federal land. If we had a monument that was supposed to intersect with one of our United States highways,
Yeah.
what happens then? Are they in the highway?
Many times what will happen, it really just depends. I mean, if it's in a culvert by an exit on-ramp or something like that, it might be. If it's in the middle of the highway, what they do is they'll place witness corners on either side of the highway, and then they'll triangulate to that position. Treat it very similar like if it was water.
It's your fault. You brought so much interesting technical information. You made me curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other commissioners? Thank you, Matt. Again, I really appreciate this. In my line of work, I kind of touch the kind of work that you do almost every day, or at least several times a week, and it makes my job easier and cheaper when it comes to my engineers. So, can appreciate that. I'm just assuming on the remonumentation that not only is it acting as boundaries, I'm assuming elevation is set on that as well.
Yes. with the advent of the GPS technology, they've been able to capture what the Z coordinate, as they call it. So we do have that on that as well.
That's great. Well, again, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Your staff's doing a good job. Thank you. All right, we will move on to the sheriff's office hazard mitigation plan. I believe Matt is the one that will be giving us our,
I'll just read that piece first.
what's that?
I'll go ahead and read that
Okay.
first.
Jenny will read this. That's coming before us right now.
The action is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve and adopt the Hazard Mitigation Plan as an official plan and submit it to the Michigan State Police Emergency Management and Homeland Security Division and Federal Emergency Management Agency Region 5 officials to enable Kent County's Hazard Mitigation Plan's final approval. Kent County recognizes that natural hazards as well as technological and human-related hazards pose a threat to people and property within our community. Understanding hazard mitigation actions will reduce the potential for harm to people and property from future hazard occurrences. An adopted hazard mitigation plan is required as a condition of future funding for mitigation projects under multiple FEMA pre- and post-disaster mitigation grant programs. Kent County fully participated with local jurisdictions in the mitigation planning process to prepare the hazard mitigation plan. Michigan State Police, Emergency Management and Homeland Security Division, and Federal Emergency Management Agency Region 5 officials have reviewed the plan and approved it contingent upon the official adoption by Kent County Board of Commissioners. A draft of the 2023 Kent and Ottawa Hazard Mitigation Plan is available online, and the sheriff recommends the adoption of the Hazard Mitigation Plan. Thank you.
All right.
All right, so I guess basically just to explain what this plan is, when people ask me what my role in emergency management is, I often tell them that it's my role to try to take yesterday's emergency and not let it become tomorrow's disaster. And so this mitigation plan does just that. It tries to identify the threats that we face here in Kent County and then work towards a way to either lessen the impact should that happen again. A good example, flooding along the river. There's oftentimes opportunities where vacant properties to maybe have municipalities purchase those up and convert it into a park. That would be a good use of a mitigation project, and there are local communities that are working towards doing those types of things. That lessens then the recurring loss that we experience based on those threats. I mean, it's an 846-page plan. I'm sure that you all had some great reading in preparation for this meeting. So I guess if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Great, thank you, Matt. Commissioners, anybody have any questions? Commissioner Pakla?
Just a quick question. How often do we have to update the mitigation plan?
It's supposed to be every 5 years. And again, I think it mentioned that in the action request. Should there be a presidentially declared disaster here in Kent County, having one of these plans in place is a prerequisite to receiving federal relief funds. So it is a 5-year process through FEMA.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner DeBoer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually had a constituent reach out to me recently, and he was very concerned about an EMP pulse and our electric grid going down. I did read through some of it. I didn't get through all of it, but was that addressed in the hazard mitigation plan?
It is. In some cases, there are, certain details that we don't expose fully within a plan like this. We don't want to put too much information about vulnerability. Not that you couldn't receive that information independently through a separate source, but we try not to aggregate it all into one place and hand it off to public domain. So I will say it is covered lightly in the plan to the point that we have kind of a concentric circle of influence into that. We do work very carefully with the local utilities. Every available technology is going to resilience of any of the networks.
Great, any other questions? Commissioner Diaz.
Thank you. Kind of just echoing Commissioner DeBoer's question here is one of the things that I've noticed that's happening locally or nationally really at the moment is these attacks that are happening against our electrical grid, essentially. I'm forgetting the substations, I believe. Is that something that is addressed? You already spoke to some of it, I think, but is that partially or at all addressed in this plan or no?
It is indeed. It's, an attack to critical infrastructure. It's broken down, from the sector. So if it was a communications sector, it would be categorized as such. If it was a power. And, I will say, we are spending a lot of time in our role working with law enforcement, intelligence, et cetera, to make not just, power transformers, I think is actually locally here in county had arsons against cell phone towers. Past 6 months or so now. Happy to report that we have someone in custody. And then it was an effort between local.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Matt, I appreciate that. This is a voice vote, so all those in favor say yes. Yes. All those opposed? All right, that has passed. All right, we will move on to the Sheriff's Department again. Sheriff, we will have Jennifer read the request.
Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to enter into an agreement with Kentwood Public Schools to provide school resource officer services, to add one new county patrol officer position, to transfer $29,300 from the sheriff's 2023 general fund budget, and appropriate $52,700 received from Kentwood Public Schools to the sheriff's 2023 special project fund budget, and to authorize the board chair or designee to sign the agreements. The Sheriff's Office would like to contract with Kentwood Public Schools to add a CPO position to provide the school with SRO services. The SRO program is a collaborative effort between the schools, community, students, and law enforcement. This program creates a safe school environment by having a certified police officer assigned to a specific school district. The goal of the program is to provide proactive law enforcement by working with educators, students, and parents to reduce crime, drug abuse, and violence in and around the school buildings and the school district. The cost of the officer is $140,572 annually. The $15,704 includes the annualized vehicle cost and assumes the purchase of a new vehicle and equipment once every 5 years. $82,000 of the annual cost, or 58%, is requested to be appropriated in the 2023 budget for the period of March 1 to September 30. Pursuant to the agreement, the school district will pay 70% of the wage and benefits costs. The school district will also pay 70% of the $4,200 per year toward the cost of the vehicle used by the officer, for a total of $90,348. All other expenses will be supported by the county's general fund at an approximate cost of $50,225. The applicable contract will be reviewed as to form by corporate counsel. If funding is eliminated or decreased, the position and/or vehicle addition will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to the fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
Great, we need a motion and support. All right, I'll have a motion by Bujak, support by Teal. All right, Sheriff.
Morning, everybody. So we have talked to so many new commissioners this round about school resource officers, but we've been building this program for a number of years. Kentwood Public Schools is actually the last school district within our primary response area to now receive a school resource officer with this request. And having that basic coverage is the reason we are bringing it out of sequence and not in a normal budget process, because we think it's imperative that we have resources at that school district and that we are available for both emergency response, but probably more importantly, day-to-day work with keeping that community safe, keeping those the school students protected while they're going to school, and working proactively to develop those relationships that really help to keep students safe in school. So I'm happy to answer any questions about it, but we are very glad that we are moving forward with Kentwood Public School District on this.
Great, thank you, Sheriff. Commissioners, Bujak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's 230 school buildings in Kent County. In this particular request, how many buildings are covered by this sheriff that's going to be in the Kentwood school system? How many buildings is that?
So, Kentwood's one of those unique districts that has a split between response areas between Kentwood Police Department and the Sheriff's Office. So the Sheriff's SRO will work throughout the school district largely on things that aren't an emergency response. So it might be work with an interdisciplinary team to develop a strategy to work with a particular student. That could happen at any of the buildings in the school district. They would certainly work with school administrators to develop strategies to take care of a particular security risk or maybe an issue that's going on. And then education. They do a lot of educational programs. But their response is going to be largely on that high school, East Kentwood High School campus, and it includes the freshman center right there physically, because that's the portion of Kentwood Public Schools that are in our response area. They would then collaborate with Kentwood Police Department for responses in the elementary schools or the middle schools that are in the Kentwood area. And certainly on a large-scale event, it's really all of us anyway. So we work closely to just make sure we're in communication with who's going in. We do go to the same dispatch center, so that helps coordinate these activities.
And one more quick question. So with this resource officer, are now all 230 buildings in the county covered by a Kent County resource officer?
So, no, there's a 850, ish square mile county. Out of that, there are 9 other police departments that respond to calls for services within Kent County. So when I refer to our coverage within our response area, this being the last building, there are a number of school buildings that are in other response areas. Like, for example, most of Grand Rapids doesn't have school resource officers. Granville does, Wyoming does, I think Walker does. So I would say we're getting very close to a large percentage of school buildings. There are safety, security strategies in place in all school buildings in Kent County. And as you might recall from ARPA funding, we are working to get additional communication services in all school buildings. So I don't mean any of that to say that they're not protected in a way that they've agreed to, in a way that they've collaborated with. But for us, this is our last building that would not have any coverage for public school buildings.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. First of all, it kind of sounded like this was your idea rather than Kentwood coming to you. No, Kentwood did come to you.
Yeah, we have talked together about this program for a number of years. And so they obviously had previous presentations on what this program would be, and and again, it's different for every school district. It's not a cookie cutter program. It's how does this fit into your model, in how your emergency responses are already developed, your staff, your security staff also. So we had a number of conversations with them, but yes, they did approach us in December of '22 to get together and have a conversation about actually doing the program in '23.
Okay. And then I had another question on the formula for the percentages, because it seems to me there was some differences. I was trying to go back and look and see for other ones that we've approved. Am I right that this is a different percentage formula?
No, not actually.
Okay.
The amounts are different because this is a different budget year, because it's ending in October, so the amounts will look pretty dramatically different than some of the other amounts that you might have seen. But if a school that we're entering into a contract with is within our patrol district. Again, it's my mission to respond to calls for service, then that would be at that school. Those schools are given a 30% discount on the cost of the program because, again, it's our mission that they're supplementing. If a school building is outside of our patrol district, and we do have a contract request that I expect will be coming, that would be an example of this. So it wouldn't be something my staff would normally respond to. A good example would be Kent Intermediate School District building. Right now, we have an SRO program there, but that's not in our response area. They pay 100% of the cost in that context, or if it's beyond the first SRO in that school building. So some school districts elect to have multiple SROs. We're in talk with a couple different school districts. Rockford, we just had that contract go through.
Right,
It was an
okay.
additional school resource officer. So in those contexts, they pay the full cost of the personnel and car.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
And then one last question. I know that one of the justifications for doing this is that you have fewer call-outs. Do we have numbers that support that, or
Yes.
we do?
Yeah, we do. I mean, so it changes. It's who's responding to it. We don't have fewer calls for service in the school districts where we have SROs. We have somebody there who manages them. So we don't have responses coming in from road patrol. And that does play out. But for example, Kentwood Public Schools calls for service to that high school was very comparable to Rockford Public Schools calls to service for their high school, even though Rockford had a school resource officer and we were responding with road patrol in Kentwood. About the same number of calls for service. But I would advocate that they're better managed when there's a consistent resource who has history and background working with that school than a response from who's ever patrolling the area around the high school and might not have had, won't have the connection of what happened yesterday or last week necessarily. And in Kentwood's context, very specifically, that's a very busy patrol area for the sheriff's office. Northern Gaines Township is one of our busiest places for shopping centers, traffic. So when you're consistently responding to one location over and over in a time frame, it does pull from resources that can be used to respond to other emergency calls for service. So that's why it is definitely an advantage for both the school district and for the sheriff's office to have this program in place.
Thank you. Thank you,
Great.
Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Pacla.
Chair. A question about the interaction between the sheriff's office and the SRO and Kentwood. Knowing that there's some long-term negative outcomes with using law enforcement as a first line of defense for disciplinary issues inside of the school, to what extent do you all have that conversation with Kentwood and sort of set things out in an MOU? I saw a section in there that talked about, broadly speaking, sort of what are the expectations, but are there additional conversations that you have, additional things in writing that we put on paper?
Yeah, it's imperative that school resource officers are not used to discipline students. And we don't participate in that kind of relationship in any of our school districts. But I would have to say that each school district SRO looks a little bit different in the way that that application happens. It's a very collaborative process, and in fact, the school districts pick who will be their SRO officer. They're allowed to interview and develop a sense of who it is that would become that school resource officer. But again, it looks a little bit different every place. But we do have don'ts. We won't do this and we won't do that, and this is how we're going to prepare an SRO for that program. And if there's an issue working with the school district, given what we are comfortable doing and what we're not comfortable doing, then we work with the school district to work that out and develop an approach that works for both of us. But, we don't find that our SROs are even put in a position of acting as disciplinaries in any of our school districts. It's very collaborative. They often do participate on a multidisciplinary team that evaluates strategy and picks, several avenues of approach with a particular student who's come on the radar multiple times. We do participate in that, but it's not the first choice of any school district to call.
That's great to hear. It sounds like they're really being used where their skill sets lie, so I appreciate that.
Commissioner Diaz.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sheriff. I've got to say that my thinking, my views on SROs have evolved over time. I graduated high school in 2016. Growing up, I'm not sure if his official title was an SRO or not, but essentially the officer that was tied to our school did not have the best reputation. And at the time, early 2010s, there was examples in other parts of the country of SROs doing some of the things that you've described here that you specifically tell our SROs not to do. And so, as I've said, my view has evolved with that. I think the more direct example is that SRO officer, I believe, who was attached to our school ended up leaving, and we got a different one for, I believe, the last 2 or 3 years of my high school experience, and it was a night and day difference. You have the example here of the Byron Center School District and how it was important that the student had that relationship with that SRO. We see the example of the situation in Burton Middle School very recently, which I'm not sure if it was the SRO or not who was alerted to it, but again, I think it's important to stress that the relationships that the SROs develop with the district and with the schools is imperative for them to be able to do their job. And so I'm grateful that, we've developed over time these rules and these policies for what officers are allowed to do and not to do, and that we were able to develop that trust between the school districts and the sheriff's office. So thank you.
Very glad to. I think it's provided for the safety of students in Kent County in a way that wasn't there prior. Yep.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Sheriff. Talked to Superintendent Polston yesterday at a meeting, a Government Matters meeting, and he's excited about the SRO and, again, the relationship that officer will then begin with the staff and students in the community. So, yep, they're excited and encouraged us to pass.
Hey, I do want to mention one thing. Obviously, our hearts and thoughts are with Michigan State University this morning after they were dealing with a very, very tragic circumstance yesterday. And I want you to know that we did send resources from Kent County to East Lansing last night, and they were available to assist. Luckily, it was brought to resolution, and safety has now been returned to the campus. But this is a very difficult thing for them to take on, and it's going to take some time for this campus to recover, the students there, the parents related to it. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. This is a voice vote. All those in favor say yes. Yes. All those opposed? It has moved to next board meeting. All right. Next on our agenda, Ms. James.
Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to add 3 juvenile probation officer positions. 17th Circuit Court is requesting the addition of 3 juvenile probation officers to manage the increasing case volumes for youth. The Raise the Age legislation is a significant factor leading to this request because based on current data, 4-year average statistics, and caseload increases. 2022 saw a significant increase in juvenile filings. Individual juvenile referrals to the court were up 47% when compared to 2021, and up 20% when compared to the previous 4-year average. Petitions increased by 45%, and cases being dealt with on formal dockets were up 58%. Case intake is up 57% from 2021, and up 38% compared to a 4-year average. The state of Michigan funds 60% of the cost for juvenile probation officers who meet certain requirements, including maintaining a maximum of 20 cases per probation officer. Currently, 8 juvenile probation officers with caseloads of 19 or 20 youth are eligible for the state subsidy, and 2 officers with caseloads exceeding 20 youth are 100% funded by the county general fund. With the addition of three officers, the 2 juvenile probation officers with more than 20 assigned youth can reduce their caseload to become eligible for state subsidy, and other juvenile probation officers can continue to maintain a caseload at or below 20 youth. The cost savings associated with the new 60% state subsidy for the 2 juvenile probation officers who are currently 100% funded by the county's general fund will fully offset the county's portion of the cost for the 3 additional officers.
Can I get a motion, please? By Teal? Do we have support by LeGrand? All right, we have Andy. Andy, if you would be willing to give us a little brief overview, would be wonderful.
Morning. Everything that she said is true. We're seeing a huge increase in our delinquency numbers. And one thing that maybe was a little bit unplanned for, not thought of as much, is the back end of things. Typically we'd get a 16-year-old on probation. When they turn 17, we'd look to transition them out. That's no longer the case. So not only are we getting more filings because of the 17-year-olds, we're keeping kids a little bit longer than we would have before. So it's really that formal docket that we're seeing. I mean, we're seeing it everywhere, but the formal docket is the most urgent because of the funding arrangement with DHHS to reimburse us 60% for those probation officers that have intensive caseloads. They define intensive caseloads as a weekly face-to-face contact with each youth on their case and a maximum caseload of 20 youth. And we're fastly approaching that in many areas. This should give us the serve that we need to not lose funding and also do a better job with the amount of kids we have.
Great, commissioners. Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is the raise the age legislation the only reason or mostly the reason, or is there an increase in juvenile delinquency as well?
It is not, certainly not the only reason. I mean, it is a big factor, but yes, we are seeing juvenile numbers go up for those 15, 16-year-olds that we've seen in the past as well.
All right, Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really need to look at the root cause. Why is there this increase? And maybe we need esports and get these young people involved in something other than destructive behaviors to themselves and to others. So I understand the need for the resources, but I think we really need to find out what the root cause is and try to mitigate that in some way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner LeGrand.
Can I have you just run through that funding formula again about how it works with the state money and the general fund?
Yeah, a big budget with family divisions in the state is the Child Care Fund. And the Child Care Fund reimburses counties for residential placements, for detention, things like that, at a rate of 50%, effectively 60%, because now they've added 10% for indirect costs for all of our costs. So it's basically a 60% reimbursement for every dollar we spend that is eligible under the Child Care Fund. Back in the late 80s or 90s, they added to that the in-home care option, which is what allows us to fund these probation officers. There's a few rules with it. But the big ones are these caseloads of restricted caseloads. You can't have more than 20 youth on your caseload, and you must see the youth on a weekly average, face-to-face contact with the youth once per week on average while they're on probation. And that allows it, and it's a 60% reimbursement. So basically, I have 2 probation officers now that we would consider out-county. Most of our probation officers are community probation officers. So they're in one geographic area, they get to make contacts, they get to know the area, again, similar to what, the philosophy we talked about earlier in this meeting. Again, so jumping from caseload to caseload, because we do have some we've got some probation officers that probably have 13 or 14 cases, but to move them, from one area to the other and kind of destroy those relationships that they have with the kids would not be as impactful. So yes, that's a long way of saying that, yeah, so we can get basically 5 for the price of 2 if we adjust those caseload sizes that way.
That's great. I mean, it's wonderful that we did the raise the age. I understand it has impacts for you, but the fact that we can deal with them hopefully with probation rather than something more severe is hopeful. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Diaz.
Yeah, I really just like to echo Commissioner Bujak's comments here. I'm definitely somebody that's a big believer in kind of attacking or addressing the systemic causes or roots for a lot of these things. And so I'm just hoping that we can kind of use the expertise that you have and that your colleagues and employees have to kind of use some of that data to see how can we make sure that we're reducing the numbers of people going into the system. As somebody who graduated high school not that long ago, who has friends or family members who some may not have always made the best choices, I think overall we need to create more ways for youth to spend their time better. That we use the example of esports, which I think would be great, but overall we just need more things, more ways to kind of keep the youth on the right track. And so I'm just hoping that we can do all kinds of data sharing and just work together towards that goal. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. All right. Again, this is a voice vote. So all those in favor say yes. Yes. All those opposed? That will move to the next board meeting. Next on our agenda is the Kent County Community Action. Ms. James.
Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve 9 grant-funded positions in Kent County Community Action to provide weatherization services to residents with the Weatherization Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Grant. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law invests $3.5 billion in the Department of Energy's Weatherization Assistance Program to reduce energy costs for low-income houses by using the most cost-effective measures to increase home energy efficiency. On February 7th, 2023, the Finance and Physical Resources Committee appropriated $1,360,500 from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services to the 2023 KCCA Fund. The allocation and grant agreement represents the first of a 5-year Weatherization Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill grant. KCCA will use the funds to inform the community about the program, review applications and inspect homes for eligibility, conduct on-site energy audits and process the audit results, secure a contractor to implement the identified improvements, monitor the contractor work, and inspect completed work and report data to the Department of Energy. The Weatherization Bipartisan Infrastructure Law requires weatherizing approximately 126 homes annually, in contrast to approximately 60 homes completed annually with the current staff complement. KCCA recommends securing 9 grant-funded positions to implement the program and spend the grant dollars. The positions include 4 weatherization and housing specialists, 3 community service assistants, and 2 clerks. The first-year period of performance is November 1, 2022 through September 30th, 2023. If the funding is eliminated or decreased, the positions will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to the fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations. Assistant Corporate Counsel will review all documents as to form.
All right. Do I have a motion? By LeGrand, support by Baker. I know, I'll put a Baker on there. All right, Gustavo, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see everyone here. Yes, so we are in a ramp-up stage for weatherization. We've had this program for a long time, and we've been averaging for most recently about 60 homes a year. We recognize from the volume that we've seen that there's a lot more homes out there that we can be getting this work done on. And so this will allow us to do that. We need to staff up, though, and this is going to help us make sure that we have a streamlined process for those that need to access this resource, and that we have enough staff to get the audits done in a timely fashion and get contractors on the job to make sure 126 homes is a large feat. We feel with the amount of staff that we are asking for, it's going to help us do that and more. So that's important.
Okay, commissioners. Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. Of the 60 homes that we do currently, we all love the stats. Do we know how much savings, or can we point to any like percentages of how much energy those residents are saving? Do we have any good data on that?
I'm not sure if we do. Roger, is that information that is available somewhere?
It depends on how much work we actually do on the home, but they base it at like a 30% savings on utilities.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Brought back up.
Commissioner Pacla.
Chair, what's the current size of the staff that you're able to use to get the 60, and how much of an increase does this represent?
So we've had a combination, but right now we have 2 auditors, 1 inspector, we have 1 CSA, and we've had a combination of about 1 clerk right now. And I can tell you right now, it is a struggle to get that 60 with the staff that we have. We felt with adding the additional staff, we'd be kind of reducing the volume that each auditor has, so they can be more efficient, more effective.
That's great, thank you. And one more follow-up, if that's all right. So am I reading this correctly that you will identify a single contractor that's going to be doing this work with the weatherization funds?
We'll identify several contractors.
Okay.
So right now, we're in the process of working with, we have conversations with Michigan Works, we have conversations with other counties, different representatives of contractors that we're trying to get in the door with to let them know how easy it is to work with the county and work with this program. Roger has done a great job of going out there to different kind of shows that he can talk to them and kind of engage and really let them know that, hey, there's work out there, there's homes that need this resource, and we can keep them busy. So we're trying to get as many, if anyone knows any, please throw them our way.
Thank you.
Commissioner Diaz.
Thank you. Do we have an idea of how many applications you get, how many people are needed every year? If there's a backlog, because if there's like a doubling essentially of the number of homes that you'll be able to do. So, do you just have an idea of how many people are currently waiting, how many people have applied, what those numbers typically look like?
We generally have to shut down applications early because we fill up very quickly. So we get about 40 to 60 applications right at the beginning of the year, and then we have to stop. And so we get calls regularly, and we have to send those people to the following year.
Okay.
So I don't think we'll have a problem with getting the 120 plus homes.
Cool. And then just a quick follow-up to that, I would just appreciate that if you could let us know, it's hopefully we're able to allocate these funds, and that you're able to expand that work. But if at any point you're feeling like, you know what, because if you're shutting down applications early in the year, to me that means that we'll be able to double the amount of homes that we can do, but there may be even more need there. So if you're feeling like, hey, we got these funds and we're increasing that work, but we still need more funds, whether it's from us or from the state or wherever the case may be, just please let us know, because I think this is a great thing, I guess, that we're working on, saving energy 30% for each home. I mean, on average, those are big savings. So the more that we can kind of expand this program and get that need addressed for the people of Kent County, then the better off we all are. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've never met a grant I couldn't spend down. I'm excited about this one.
Like free money. Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious, what's your most common job with the weatherization? Like, is it insulation, or what are you doing in these homes to help better them?
Yeah, well, I'll have to refer to Roger. He's the expert.
Would you be able to come up to the microphone, please? Thank you so much. Put you on the spot today. Thank you.
Most of the measures we do are like attic insulation, foundation insulation, and wall insulation. It's pretty amazing. I've been up in Kent County now for about 8 years, and there's so many homes up here that don't have insulation in them. And it's really amazing how many there is that we could help, so.
Wonderful. Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, did some research on this up in Mecosta County, and I think that energy savings is one thing, but really we're talking about families that are freezing in their homes. And so it's just like we need to if we can improve the quality of their lives, it's pretty important, so.
Absolutely.
Great. Any other commissioners? Commissioner DeBoer.
Mr. Chair, I just have another question. After the 5 years, after the grants no longer have the funding, are you going to reapply for, or do you expect any grants to be there after the 5 years? Are you going to have to cut your staffing in half because we don't have the funds for that? I'm just wondering, like, long-term solution, what do you hope to do after those 5 years of grant funding is gone?
Great. Any other commissioners? I just want to note, 30% reduction potentially in energy costs is substantial when you're talking several $100s for some of these homes, and they're quite large, so we're talking real dollars that can be used for food and clothing and other resources and rent. So that's really, really important. On any of these, do you ever have any process type photos as contractors are doing the work? I'm assuming they're either drilling on the outside or the inside of the home, depending on what kind of siding, and then you're plugging that back up in the foundation. Is there any process photos that you could ever send the LHR on an email type form?
Absolutely. We should be able to do it very easily, so.
Okay.
We do, right now, when we do the actual energy audit, we do pictures at that time, and then when we do the quality control inspection, we take pictures again. If the contractors are doing, like, let's say work practice, for instance, they have to, it's required that they show us their setup and everything on that too, so.
Great. No, I appreciate it. I think just showing commissioners the photos and some of the things that we approve and what that looks like could be important for us. So again, I really appreciate the work that you do. All right. Again, we do have a motion and support on the floor. Again, this is a voice vote. All those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed? It has passed. We will move on to a Board of Commissioners appointments to various boards.
Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to appoint Tracy Silas to the Community Health Advisory Committee to fill an unexpired 2-year term ending December 31, 2024, and to the Kent County Family and Children's Coordinating Council for an unexpired 3-year term ending December 31st, 2025. The board annually appoints county residents and commissioners to boards, commissions, and committees in accordance with applicable statutes or standing rules. Interest in serving on the boards, commissions, and committees was solicited via the county website, email, social media, and other platforms. 3 interview teams. Team 1 was Commissioner Breivy, LeGrand, and McLeod. Team 2 was Commissioners Burrow, Skaggs, and Ponstein. And Team 3 was Commissioners Teal, Coleman, and Hennessy. Reviewed all applications and conducted interviews for the various vacancies. For the CHAC vacancy, it is recommended to appoint Tracy Silas to fill an unexpired 2-year term ending December 31st, 2024. For the KCF-CCC vacancy, it is recommended to appoint Tracy Silas to fill an unexpired 3-year term ending December 31, 2025.
All right, do I have a motion and support? By Teal, support by LeGrand. Commissioners, any comments, questions, concerns? All right, this is a great group, but some of these are kind of mandated, and some of these agencies do pick their own folks. I believe we'll have something coming up where I'll be asking somebody to chair and 2 other members for a couple appointments that I believe that we have coming up here relatively quickly. This past go-around last year on those 3 committees, and talking to those other 3 committee chairs and those committee members, it was probably our largest, most robust group of individuals that have applied. We had fantastic candidates, I thought, at least the ones we were interviewing in ours, and we had to turn a lot of people down. So it was nice to see, in a lot of ways, it made our job a lot easier. So it's nice to see our community involved and the word getting out. So nice work. All right, all those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed? All right, those folks will be appointed to those 2 committees. All right, miscellaneous. Commissioners, any miscellaneous? All right, seeing none, do we need a motion and support to that? Right, the bar? All right, and then Teal with support. All those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed? Meeting has been adjourned.